You ain't nothing but a bunch of scum.
Therefore, these proceedings are now
Putting
concluded.
somebody who is to death.
This is going to be a roller coaster of a ride of a story. If you guys have never heard the story of Aileen Wuornos, then just have a seat. It's going to be a wild one. If you guys don't already know me, hi, my name is Christina. Whenever I was 21, I was sentenced to 3 years prison in the state of Florida. That's important today. We'll talk about that in a minute. Before we get into this video, though, I do want to let you guys know that this video is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Please remember to be kind to everybody, everywhere, in your everyday life, in your home, in the grocery store, and especially in the comment section down below. Please do not show hate to anybody, anywhere. Good morning, my lovelies, my beauties, my friends. My name is Christina and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for clicking on this video. I really hope that you will subscribe, stick around, take a chance on hearing some things that I have to say. And if you are a returning subscriber, y'all already know. Y'all are my babies. So good morning, good morning, good morning. How is everybody doing today? I hope you all are having an amazing day. Yes, I do have a dress on, okay? It's a whole dress, goes all the way to the floor. I know from like here up, it's gonna look like I don't have anything on, but I do. So if you guys don't already know me, hi, my name is Christina. I do have a second channel. My second channel is Casually Christina. I do things way more casually over there. Did you guys see the hair video? You should go and watch it if you're bored. I also have a Patreon. My Patreon is for 18 and up. Over there, we do some crazy story times and we go live. It's a really good time if you're 18 and up and you'd like to join. We also have a podcast. Fun fact, this weekend, I believe, a podcast about this story is going to be coming out, a new one with me and Jeremy talking uncut, not underneath the thumb of YouTube about both of our opinions in grave more detail. So if you guys want to check out our podcast, and then I also have an Instagram, which you should be over there anyways, because I mean, it's an embarrassing time for myself, but you may enjoy it. So all of those links are always in the description box if you would like to check them out. Okay. Before we get into this story, I just want to kind of give you like a little rundown. Some of you may know this is Aileen. She is like one of the most notorious. She was the first female named or like documented, I'm sure she's not the first, but documented serial killers, YouTube, in the United States that we know of. Or neither here nor there, we're going to just go with that because that's what is out there. But anyway, so she was the first, supposedly. She killed at least 7 men. Oh yeah, the men are watching this like, oh, Christina. I always get the comments, Christina, you're always talking about men. You're a man hater. You're a dee. No, I'm literally not. I'm married to one. I have, whatever. I mean, I guess they're okay. You know what I'm saying? But no. But anyways, she killed 7 men, possibly 8. Okay. The reason why this is going to be such a roller coaster is because of her childhood and her past. Okay, when you guys hear this story, you're going to really wonder what you would have done too if you were in her situation, or at least I did, but I'm a little cuckoo anyways, y'all already know that. And the other interesting fact about this before we get into it is that she was in the same prison that I was in. As a matter of fact, she was executed 3 years before I got in, which is so crazy to me because if you guys don't know me, which I'm sure you guys do, I've been to prison. I got sentenced to 3 years, like I said in the beginning. And, I saw death row there. I saw the death row inmates, which are women. When you see on TV, nowadays, like now in 2020, you can see female inmates on death row on television. But back when I went in 2005, like there wasn't a lot of that. All you saw was like men, right? Like Ted Bundy's, Jeffrey Dahmer type of things. But when I went to prison and I saw death row women, I was like, oh, whoa, you know what I'm saying? Like we just as crazy, but I already knew we were crazy. So, okay. 35-minute intro. Y'all love me. I love y'all. Let's get into it. Aileen Wuornos, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. We're just going to call her Aileen, okay? Because she went by a bunch of different names, y'all. Aileen, who was born on February 29th of 1956 in Michigan, was a deeply, deeply troubled child. I mean, she had some serious issues. Okay, so she was born in Michigan. Her parents had some issues too. Now, her parents married when they were very, very, very young. I want to say her mom was like 14 or something like that. So they were young. Now, this is back, she was born in 1956, so this had to be, the 40s, whatever. So her parents were married young, and they had her older brother. They had him first, and then they ended up having Aileen. Now, the dad of Aileen actually was in and out of mental hospitals most of his adult life for being a chomo. We got to say it in the appropriate way, but you know what I mean. He was doing things that he shouldn't have been doing. We just getting started, you guys. This is a really hard story to tell, okay? So he was in and out. So you already know he had mental issues, which, in 2020, he'd have been in prison. But they had him in and out of mental hospitals. Do you know what that means? That means they put him in a mental hospital because he was messing with somebody. They let him out. He did it again. And then they put him back in it. Okay? Let's keep going here. So at the age of 4, Aileen and her older brother ended up moving in with their grandparents. Okay, so their grandparents were raising them. Now, Aileen and her brother's grandfather was very abusive. I mean, he used to beat them like you would not even believe. There were stories from other kids in the neighborhood that said that they would walk home with Aileen from school or whatever, and their grandpa was like an rage-filled anger, and he would make her strip down to nothing in front of the other neighborhood kids and beat her with a belt. Now, I done had some pretty bad whoopings myself, you guys. So it was a little bit different back then, but the way that I'm imaging it, this older man, making this little girl strip down in front of her friends, bending over, and that is horrible. But that's what she went through. Now, they say that when she was in school, now she's still young now. She's in elementary school, okay? Said friends and different people that ended up testifying later down the road said that she had this explosive anger problem, which I could imagine. She came from obviously a mentally ill mother and a mentally ill father, and then ends up moving in with her grandpa who was abusing her, and her grandma had all these other kind of alcoholic or whatever issues herself too. And then now she's, going through all this mess, right? So she had this explosive, and other kids didn't know how to deal with it. So you got to think this is back in the 1960s or whatever. They didn't even talk about mental health the way that they do now. Even when I was a kid in 1980s, they didn't talk about mental health. So I could only imagine what it was like back in the 1960s. They just thought she was nuts, but really she was mentally ill as well. Okay, so let's keep going here. Rumor has it, according to people that actually testified in court, that Aileen's older brother was having his way with her to the point that she started thinking it was normal, and they started having a very unhealthy relationship, her and her big brother, if you know what I mean. I'm not going to go into detail because it's freaking disgusting. But, I'm going to talk more about that. Let me get through the story. I got so many opinions, you guys. So they're doing that, whatever. Now, Aileen starts developing this, finding her self-worth in this way. Okay, my brother's respecting me. Okay, my grandpa wants me to get in this position in order to do. So Aileen, at a very, very young age, at 11 years old, starts trading favors in the neighborhood with the other boys for cigarettes and alcohol and stuff like that. So she's 11 years old already doing stuff for those types of items, okay? When she turned 13, she ends up getting impregnated by her grandpa's friend. Now, when her grandparents, and I say grandparents because it's just so frustrating, find out she's pregnant, they send her to a home. She's 13 years old, okay? They send her to a home for unwed mothers. That's what they had back then in the 1960s or whatever. Homes for unwed mothers. So she is a little girl, 13 years old, pregnant. I just can't imagine what she went through. I know what I went through as an adult, but let's keep going. So she's pregnant in this place, and she has this baby, and she names the baby. She gives the baby up for adoption in this home, but she names the baby after her brother because she's so in love with her brother. You guys, she was sick, okay? So when she gets out of there, her grandparents kick her out of the house. So now she's 14 years old, postpartum, has had a baby, and now she's living on the streets. So she has this friend that has this like, wooded area in her backyard. And she starts sleeping in the wooded area and walking out to the street and selling herself. So at a young age of 14, she becomes a worker, an S worker, if you know what I mean. She grows up this way. So basically this is how she lives. She's 14, 15, 16, 17, She's going out to the highway. She's making her money. She's going back into the woods and sleeping. Her friend, who later talked about this much later, said like it was so cold out there. Of course, she was a kid at the time too. I mean, she's living in the house with her parents, seeing her friend out there sleeping in the woods. And none of the parents of any of the neighborhood kids wanted her around because they all thought she was like a little hussy and she was doing all this stuff, which she was. But nobody helped her because she was sick and she had this explosive. She just had a lot of issues, okay? As time continued to go on, she just used her body to survive. That's all it was. She wasn't living a life. She was just surviving, okay? Now, in 1976, which would have made Aileen about 20 years old, she hitchhiked her way to Florida. You guys know, if you've watched any of my other videos, like they used to do that back then. They would hitchhike everywhere. It seems like that would be kind of cool to do if it was safe. You know what I'm saying? Just like, tell your family, I'll see you in a month. You stick your thumb out and you just travel the whole United States. Like, good old days. But anyways, moving on. So she hitchhikes her way to Florida and she ends up meeting this guy that's 69 years old and he's a yacht club president. His name was Louis Fell and they married almost instantaneously. Like he married her, swept her off her feet. He's 69 years old. She's 20. He's like, baby, come here. I got you. Well, you know what I'm saying? Sugar daddy, whatever. They got married. Their marriage though was annulled in 9 weeks. He actually said that she took his cane and assaulted him with it, which I'll let you guys be the judge of that. Not long after that, her brother, the one that I told you guys all about, she named the baby after and all that stuff, he died of esophageal cancer. Now in 1981, now remember, the husband's undivorced her, she's moving on, she's back to her old ways. 1981, she is arrested for armed robbery. She spends a little bit of time in prison for that and she gets out. She's back to her old ways, walking the streets, smoking her cigarettes, getting her money, and back into the woods or a hotel room or anywhere she can stay. Not long after she's released from prison, she meets this woman named Tyra. Now she meets this woman named Tyra. This woman, Tyra, there's so much different conflicting information out there. If you guys watch the documentary, it shows that they met each other in a bar. But if you do more reading up, it sounds like Tyra worked in a hotel room and she met her there. So either way it goes, she met this woman named Tyra. Now, Tyra was a lesbian. Now, at first, Aileen was like, get away from me. I'm not like that, and Tyra was like, I just want to be your friend. Tyra was lonely. Tyra came from a really strict, faith-based background, and she was struggling internally because she was attracted to women, but she couldn't be like that with her family. And she saw and met Aileen, who was obviously a misfit, who had obviously been shunned from her own family, if that's what you want to call it. And so they linked up. Well, they end up falling in love. And they get together and they move in together. Now, by this time, Tyra's not working anymore and they're all living off of Aileen's S work. Okay, so Aileen is still S working now at this point. She's supporting both of them. She's getting them different places. She's making all of these plans with Tyra. She really, really loved Tyra, even though at the beginning she was like, okay, I don't like women at all like that. But, she was, at this point, she's thinking this is the only person that has actually shown me kindness, tenderness, and love. I mean, you guys got to understand, every other time she was intimate with somebody was either a family member or the friend of a family member or the neighborhood boys for some cigarettes or somebody for $10, $20, $30, or $40 really quick in a car. And now she's got this woman who is treating her like a human being. And Aileen was eating it up, man. She loved her. She told her she would do anything for her. And when she told her she would do anything for her, she meant it. Now, as Aileen was still doing her S work, in November 30th of 1989, she goes and gets into this car with this dude. Now, this guy's name was Richard Mallory, and she goes off into this, she's driving with him or whatever. He's driving. They're negotiating a price. Now, the story flip-flops a bunch, but the original story was that he tied her up, beat her. She came to. He was like, she comes to and she's tied up. She's got blood dripping from her face. He's taking a bottle of like alcohol and pouring it in her open wounds, pouring it up her, took a crowbar, shoved it inside of her while she's tied up, bleeding, screaming. She ends up getting loose, getting a piece, and shoots him 7 times, and he's dead. Now, come to find out, this guy, Richard Mallory, he was like a convicted R-word, okay? And not just one time, multiple times. So, supposedly, she was so traumatized, she snapped, and she did that to him, and she took his life or whatever. She stole his car, she took his money from there, and she left his body out there into the woods. After that, when she gets back to the place that her and her girlfriend Tyra are living, she doesn't tell Tyra right away. She's like super skittish. You know, she literally just took a man's life. I mean, she had explosive disorder. She did crazy stuff all the time. But this is the first time, supposedly, it's the first time she took someone's life. After that, Aileen no longer wanted to trade her body for money. She wanted to get her money the way she could. She said in interviews that she, at that point, enjoyed robbing people. Like, she enjoyed it. Now, over the span of the next year, she meets up with 6 other guys that we know of, other than the other one, in the same exact way and takes their lives. There could be a 7th, but we don't know that. She only admitted to 7. Aileen's final victim was a police officer that was off duty, and she did not know it. She did not know it until after she had already taken his life. Now, how did she end up getting caught way back in like the 1989 and 1990s? Her and Tyra were driving a stolen car from one of the people that she had shot, and they were driving it, and Tyra was driving, and they weren't paying attention. They ran off the side of the road. They kind of wrecked the car a little bit. These neighbors come out, and they're like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" Aileen and her girlfriend are all skittish. They're like, we're fine. And the neighbors are like, we're going to call the cops. And they're like, no, please do not call the cops. Please do not call the cops. We're fine. Well, later on, when the news starts reporting, this person had passed away, there's a missing car, people put 2 and 2 together, a sketch goes out of these 2 women, and the cops start looking for them. Now, people start talking, and people are looking for them. Now, detectives are starting to have a hunch that it's Aileen, and it all came up from a fingerprint. They somehow, some way ended up getting her fingerprint. There's a lot of details that goes into that. I'll talk more about that on the podcast, but I don't want to bore you guys too much from there. But they matched Aileen's fingerprint, so they started monitoring her and looking for her. Well, in 1991, they knew she was at this biker bar, so they found her there, and they couldn't just immediately arrest her. They had an undercover guy sitting there talking to her, like trying to bait her in with different things. The undercover was talking to her saying like, I really want to just kill somebody. And she's like, buy me another beer. She didn't admit anything, but she was just like, let me get another beer. Well, the cops, they get tired. She's starting to get restless, and they're watching her from outside, and they're scared that Aileen is going to like take off. So they arrest her on like basically nothing, on no charge. Well, when they arrest her and they have her in jail, then they go over and start talking to and threatening her girlfriend, Tyra. Now, Tyra knew that she had murdered a couple guys. She was not involved in it herself, but she knew. So, of course, the investigators and the cops used that to their advantage, and they started manipulating, which I don't want to say manipulating because that is what investigators do. If you guys don't know, like I've been there too. You guys can watch my interrogation video. I've been there. They know how to scare the poo out of you. And I knew better because there's TV and stuff like that now. Back in 1990 and 1991, there was no kind of Googling like, is this normal? I'm sure Tyra was scared out of her wits, okay? So what they did was they had a recording phone call, which if you guys don't know, all of the phones that are in jail and that are in prison have recordings. They're always recording. So if you're talking on them, make sure you know that they're being recorded. Anyways, so she calls her girlfriend Tyra, and Tyra basically sets her up and gets her to, admit without admitting. And she's crying to Aileen, and she's like, I'm going to go to jail for something that you did. And Aileen says, okay, I'll go and admit. I'll go and admit that I did it all so you don't get in trouble. And Tyra goes, yeah, but when? And Aileen goes, right now. So Aileen goes and confesses. And then from there, it becomes a whole entire circus. because Aileen, at this point, she's trying to claim self-defense, okay? She's like, listen, yes, I took all these people's lives, but they were all of them tried to, hurt me and all of this stuff. And she went back and forth and she made a huge spectacle of court. You guys, if you have not watched the documentary Monster, there's tons of documentaries on this. She made a huge spectacle of court and she ended up getting a death penalty for every single life she took. So, and that's what it was. And she was so frustrated because she was like, how many times are you guys going to kill me? Just kill me already. So there is the story. Now, I want to talk about my opinions on some things. You guys remember, hang tight for the podcast because I can talk way more freely over there because this is a really, really messy story. The thing that gets people, I think, the most about this is because of her past. It doesn't matter what kind of past you have. It does not mean that you can just go and take people's lives, okay? You just can't. But at the same time, people sympathize with her because she was not well. If you guys did not watch this video right here of mine about being in solitary confinement, when I watched the interviews of Aileen, the way that her eyes look, the way that her mouth, she licks her lips, the way that she talks, the way she's kind of all over the place, reminds me of that woman that I was in solitary confinement with. But the woman that I was in solitary confinement with was worse than what I seen with Aileen. Okay? That just tells me right there that which I already knew, there are so many mentally ill people in prison that really should be somewhere else. Not like Aileen's father. Aileen's father's the one that should have been in prison. You know what I'm saying? Anyways. So I really believe that Aileen was so severely, first of all, a lot of mental illnesses are genetics. They are transferred genetically. I believe she had that, okay? Then she was abused. She went through all this stuff. She was taken advantage of. She lived on her own. Basically, like, you guys watched the Flip-Flopping Jungle Book where Mowgli is raised in the woods by the animals. Like, she was literally raised in the woods at 14 years old, selling her body and living in the woods. Like, what do you expect her to do? You expect her to just get up and go to college and become a doctor? You know what I mean? Like, especially back then, back in the 1970s, the 1980s. Like I said, I've told you guys, even with myself, everything that I went through with the kidnapping and all of that stuff and the PTSD, and people did not really talk about PTSD and mental health even when I was a kid. I can't imagine what she went through as a kid. Again, that does not give her the right to take people's lives, okay? But it is so weird that was not given the death penalty, but Aileen was. Not just one time. Many times she was given the death penalty. I mean, they could only take her life once. And she wanted it at the end. By the end, she did. Now, she went back and forth. At one point, she says, okay, I want to confess everything. None of these guys were abusive. I just snapped and did it. And then she would go back to her old story and then go back flip-flop. And that just showed me, and especially Jeremy while we were watching it, she was so mentally ill, dude. She was so mentally ill. And my heart goes out to the families that lost people. Especially, I think there was like one guy that was like, all of them, none of them. I don't care if they pick up S workers or whatever. That doesn't mean you deserve to lose your life. By no means. But there was one guy that was genuinely like a good man that was even telling her like, hey, he picked her up. She was hitchhiking on the side of the road. Aileen gives him the sob story like she did all of her Johns, or my poor Johns out there. I always use and abuse your name, but one of her Johns. And she's telling him this sob story. And he was like, listen, my wife will help you, come back to my house, And she ended up taking his life too. She just didn't want to deal with it. And it's like, dude, this is such a crazy story. But again, being somebody that's been in prison, there are really mentally ill people that are in prison. Whew. Yeah. So what do you guys, have you heard about this story? What do you think about it? Do you sympathize? I sympathize with her childhood. I feel bad for her. But at the same time, there was no right for her to take anybody's life. You know what I mean? A lot of us have had really bad childhoods. I thought I did. She had a really, really bad one, okay? At the same time, like, I don't know, you guys. It's a crazy, crazy situation. I want to know what y'all think. Make sure you go and subscribe to our podcast so you can hear very soon our uncut version of how we feel about everything. As always, my loves, please do not forget to like this video. It's a free way that you can help your girl out. And until next time, I love you guys so, so, so very much. And I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye. Love you guys. Bye.